Cinematography has been around since the early 1900s. It is a mixture of camera techniques and artistic techniques in order to produce a film to the best of its creative ability and meet the movie director's standards. There are many famous movie shots that are all down to cinematography to make them as great and iconic as they are. For example, The Shining, Romeo and Juliet, or even Stand By Me. You can also use cinematography in animation, as these still require camera shots. A famous well-known cinematic shot in an animation is Mulan. Cinematography began with technology like zoetrope, vitascope and kinetoscope and more, with the earliest animated cartoon being made in 1906 called Humorous Phases or Funny Faces. It was a silent cartoon and it featured different faces being drawn on a chalkboard. However, the first motion picture with sound was produced in 1927 and was named The Jazz Singer. When films were being produced, there were no cameramen. The whole thing was on the hands of the filmmakers themselves. They took on building sets, writing scripts, directing actors, and framing shots. But as time went on, equipment got better and more people were hired. The use of lighting started to become a regular thing. Technology has improved massively over the last 100 years. For example, we have evolved our lighting design, finding a way to build different scenes and different lighting, whether this be how well the scene is lit or casting shadows to create certain eeriness or vibes. This means we have been able to capture shots such as these ones shown. As well as this, we are evolving different softwares, causing our films and animations to get better. For example, Cinema 4D and other softwares have add-ons every now and then, where it allows you to do new and different things. Cinema 4D is used in the film industry to make 4D animations. As time goes on, it gets better and easier to use. The history of cinematography goes way back. In the year 1973, Edward Muybridge took numerous photos of horses while it was running along using 24 cameras while they were placed along the track. These photos were adapted into a zoopraxiscope in order to create the short projected movie. In the late 19th century, the use of film for educational and scientific purposes started to rise. Jean Pain-Lévy, who is a French biologist, started relying on film in order to capture the moment of microorganisms, bacteria and cells. Starting in 1915, the first movie camera was invented, so close-up shots were able to be achieved without the need of physically moving the camera. And 5 years later, most films that were made came with audio. Most movies were monochrome, as coloured film was subsequently higher in cost. This was until the 1950s when colour was incorporated into films. However, for artistic purposes, some films were still produced in black and white. These films were actually still shot in black and white, but later on were coloured by hand or on machines, like in Annabelle's Serpentine Dance or Edison Manufacturing Company. In the late 1980s, Sony started to sell electronic cinematography. This is the idea of having digital film images rather than using film stock. In 1999, George Lucas started to include footage that was filmed with HD cameras for the first time in Star Wars. The use of different camera shots were not used in early films, as the directors thought that the audience would lose track of what was happening. Many different people have shaped how cinematography works today. For example, Roger Deakins. Roger Deakins is a cinematographer who has worked on films like Skyfall, Blade Runner, Rango, and even the upcoming film The Goldfinch. His first feature film as a cinematographer was Mountains of the Moon in 1990, and received his first major award for his work in The Shawshank Redemption. He is mostly known for his work in No Country for Old Men and True Grit. As well as working on motion pictures, he also worked as a visual consultant on the animated film WALL-E. Deakins is most famous for using simplistic lighting in his shots, often only using up to 2 lights, and he also only shoots using spherical lenses. Another famous cinematographer is Darius Khondji, born on October 21st in 1995. His most famous work is films such as Amour, Midnight in Paris, and The Beach. After doing further research about Khondji, I found out that his style changes to fit whatever film he is working on, but there are some noticeable styles that run through most of the films that he works on. For example, he prefers to use soft lighting, almost shadowless, in his clips. In a lot of his shots, he doesn't like to use the Steadicam. He prefers anamorphic lenses. Darius has worked with world-famous directors such as Danny Boyle, Woody Allen, David Fincher, and Neil Jordan. Instead of keeping the camera still like most early films, different camera shots have been discovered and invented throughout the years. For example, tilt shots, panning shots, tracking shots, and crane shots, as well as so many more. Different camera shots that help alter a scene's mood are shots like close-ups and extreme close-ups, so that the audience are able to sense tension in scenes or focus on specific feelings. For example, in Western films, or before a fight in a film, there is usually an extreme close-up shot of people's eyes so that the audience can feel tension. Over-the-shoulder shots is a shot where the camera is placed behind someone's shoulder out of focus, while someone or something in front of this person is in focus. This is seen to make a scene more natural for the audience as well as adding depth into the shot. Tracking shots are used to follow a certain person or object in the film. They are achieved using a dolly and help make a static scene have more movement. However, a lot of cinematography does come down to the editing, and as mentioned before, softwares have been getting better over the years. With editing, we are able to alter lighting and colour in shots in order to fit the aesthetic and the idea that the director has. As well as lighting, editing can also help to add transitions, for example fade in, fade outs, dissolves or slides. I wanted to see if I could master these different shots and get the same effect that you do in films. I wanted to see if I can achieve tension with an extreme close-up, if I could achieve a natural feel with an over-the-shoulder shot, and I wanted to see if I could successfully reach a more engaging shot with a point of view. In order to find out more about the topic of cinematography, I wanted to interview someone who knew a lot about it.
What does cinematography mean to you? Cinematography, to me, means a way of telling a story, whether that's through shot composition or colour, lighting, the way you move the camera. Cinematography is a way of telling a story. Whether it's just from a high angle, a low angle, or just the way you compose a shot. So I could have sort of a wall behind me here, but maybe over here, so over here, this side, maybe over this side, there's a beautiful lake with trees, and it all looks really pretty. So just by kind of framing your shot, you can choose to ignore the bit over that side of me, okay, and just frame it there, so you're kind of making the picture not look as nice. It's a basic example, but to me that's what it's about. It's about framing your shot and angling your shot to help tell a story. How has technology changed movies today? Technology has moved movies on a great deal when you consider the very beginnings, which were really small little cameras that you had to sort of wind the film around in order to get your images, sort of wind it around at 12 frames a second, like that. Through the advancement of, even wind up, sort of clockwork, winding the camera up so it would run smoothly for a few seconds, through to battery operated cameras, to movies with bigger film stock, and cameras got bigger for a while, to incorporate sound and things like that, and then cameras got smaller, so more independent filmmakers could go out and make films, but then obviously digital came along, and the way digital has taken over now has been a massive change to the movie industry. It means that more people can make films. People can make films easier, they can make films, more importantly, cheaper, and you can distribute your films much more easily than you could have done back in the olden days of cinema. Do you think that cinematography is important? Yes, I do. Cinematography is vitally important. Without it, you wouldn't have any images. You'd just be listening to a radio play. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're going to make a film, then you need some degree of cinematography in order to actually have some images on screen, which is kind of what it's all about. What do you think the importance of colour, lighting and film scores are? First, colour. Colour obviously is really important. Colours create moods, different colours you associate with different things. It's basic semiotics. So, lighting a scene in a certain way can be extremely beneficial to creating a mood. It's also a good storytelling technique as well. Think about a film called Traffic by Steven Soderbergh. He has a film which is set in 3 separate locations, and you're cutting between them constantly throughout the film. So, for instance, one part of the story is set in Washington, and it's like a politician, I think. So everything's very blue. Okay, it's very kind of political and cold. And then you've got another part of the story which is set in Mexico, and that's orange, and it's very bleached out. It looks sun-bleached and hot. And then the other part, I think it's something like Texas, and it's someone at university on campus, and it's very naturalistic colours. It just looks natural. So when the story cuts between these places, because the colour changes, you're able to instantly see where the film is being set. But yeah, I mean, look at The Matrix, the kind of green hue like an old computer screen and things like that. There's a great old horror film called Suspiria, which is all primary colours to kind of make it look a bit like Snow White and make it look childish. And it's, yeah, you can do loads and loads of stuff with colour. Also that lighting equally is important. Romantic comedy, is kind of really naturalistically lit. It's more of a kind of 3-point lighting setup. A horror film is going to be high contrast and shadows. So lighting is just as important as telling a story as the colour itself. And film scores, yeah. I don't know what it's got to do with cinematography, but it complements, or it should complement the visuals that we're seeing. Musical score should, as everything else does in the movie, help tell the story or help convey an emotion or a feeling. So film scores are very important, especially when they're used in conjunction with cool visuals as well.
In conclusion, cinematography is needed in order for a film to be produced, whether it's simple yet vibrant lighting and basic camera movements like for sitcoms, or whether lighting is one of the more important aspects of the film to create certain vibes for horror films. Using different camera shots will help involve and capture your audience and their attention. The evolution of cinematography has shaped the way the film industry has become today.